All right. So we made it back to the Combat Base Club for another podcast.
Yay!
Yee. We're joined by Melissa, the CEO.
What's up, guys?
What's up?
What's up?
By the OG grappler, Chris Haueter.
Standing by.
The Venerable. By John Behind the Lens is in the house.
Big J.
I'm Tobin, the producer. And today we have a guest. Esteemed guest again. He is a former national level USA Judo coach, a former 81 kilogram Masters 2 Judo champion, new dad.
Yes.
Kind of recent combat-based black belt.
Yes. Very proud of that.
A great training guy, Hamid.
Thank you.
Welcome, Hamid.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Dude, we want to hear about judo stuff. You trained with Jimmy Pedro for a while, which is interesting.
Yes.
I know you had a lot of training with some of the Olympic athletes that the USA has for judo. And you've got a long experience with judo. We want to hear about how that affected your life and about your jiu-jitsu and how that all congeals and just hear what's up with you because we love you.
I love you guys. I love Combat Base, man. It's honestly, this is like my sanctuary. This is when I come here, I feel at peace, and there's like unity here, and there's so much love here. Like what Chris and Melissa have created is so unique and such an amazing community. I would love to see you guys recognized for that. I acknowledge you for that. Thank you guys for creating that, and I am so proud to say I'm a Haueter black belt. I really am grateful to be here.
Well, I feel honored that you are. And I remember, like, when I first met you, you were related to Mike Moe,
Yes.
who's an SBG black belt, who's been here for the last, like, 5 years. Who's a great guard, great partner, but not really a stand-up guy. And then you're this judo black belt, excellent stand-up guy who wasn't bad on the ground, but like, and I love when people are an expert or reach a high level in one art and begin to pursue another. I think that always shows to me a lot of character. And as I've said a million times, as an avid lover of all the combat sports, especially the grappling arts, I always think of the judo as the grandpa of it all, or the original judo. Mm-hmm. And so I always love to see more pure judo a lot of times, because even back in the early days, and I'm going to ask you a question in a minute.
Sure.
The judo, what I call the stand-up cloth clinch game, was becoming very lost as the sport rules of jiu-jitsu were changing. And I could see how judo had changed because of the sport rules implemented in it. And there's always that attention to preserve the art, preserve the street effectiveness of it, and become a competitive sport that tries to do that both, which is the original reason of all combat sports, is how do we preserve the art and be able to play this game 100%.
I 100% agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. Judo absolutely got watered down because it became an Olympic sport. That was probably the biggest detriment of becoming an Olympic sport, was the fact that, you know, they took away so much. It gave us a podium to, you know, basically show the world what judo is, which is wonderful, because, you know, then we can use it to unite people and bring people together and create communities. But it took away the certain aspects of it, because, I mean, ultimately, at the highest levels, these athletes are going through injuries on a scale where average person doesn't have to deal with them. Travis almost died from one of his injuries. So, like, you know, they're trying to avoid those, and I understand that, you know, and I'm compassionate to that. But at the same time, the certain aspects were removed to make it more fun for the audience, like grabbing the
Yes.
legs, which for me, I'm a wrestler. So, you know, if somebody's got this beautiful Japanese style judo, how do I neutralize them if I can't grab their legs?
Right.
You know?
When did it become an Olympic sport?
Oh gosh.
64.
Was it 64?
Wait,
Yeah. And then
So
I think
long
the women
before
came
you
in the
were
80s.
alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, before I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and I think initially they had leg grabs. They had leg grabs up
Yeah.
into, I think, the 2000s.
I think so.
And but then they took it away, and when they took it away, I feel like the sport lost something and it gained something. I mean, they feel like it gained excitement, which is true, but it also lost a certain element of it. It's like I feel like it kind of became a little bit incomplete.
But the judo you learned was always like the Olympic style.
No, I actually started learning judo with leg grabs,
Oh.
and you know we were able to do like katagatami, variations of katagatami. Those were my favorite throws. You know, the fireman's carry was literally, you know, and double leg blast. Those were my throws. Like I used those both in wrestling and judo, and they adapted to each other so well. So when they took it away from me, I was like, you know, I had to change my game. You know, and you know, it didn't help me in the sense that because I was no longer, I felt like I was no longer a complete grappler because I couldn't use what I took in wrestling and put it in judo. Couldn't use my judo techniques the way I wanted to.
But why did it get taken away? Like because you decided to train at an Olympic style?
No, it got taken away from competition. So a lot of
when
places
you were a
just,
kid,
yeah.
you could do it in
Yes.
competition, and
Yes.
then there was a shift.
Yeah,
And you
that's
could
that.
no longer do it in competition.
Okay.
And that's that thing with that I say all the time. Environment is stronger than will, and the culture is the environment I'm talking about.
Yes.
The environment changes, and even the first generation that has to adapt will change, in spite of wanting to keep your old style or stay pure or whatever it is. You will adapt to the group, the culture that you're in, and I mean, I always say I'm certainly not against change. I'm not one of those people that totally rejects change. Like I'm not a staunch conservative grappling thing, but I recognize the value of retaining the original art and trying to figure out why it was done this way. I think the history of it, when you look at the long arc, is where you can really see the good and the bad simultaneously. It was a wonderful thing that judo, when American wrestlers, Russian wrestlers came and started grabbing legs and beating top Japanese judoka, then I could see how they were offended for ego, but also to say now we're starting to have this wrestling in a gi thing, and the judo was starting to look a little bit like sport jiu-jitsu because you can't punch or kick, you can lead with your face, and it becomes this whole change, and then you lose the original essence of the art, which is how do I do an upright throw, kept upright because you don't want to get punched and kicked.
Yeah.
But because we're not going to punch and kick, we don't want to start bending over. So we're going to make a rule that, it's interesting how, because I'm talking a lot, but in the early jiu-jitsu days, I would watch them and I would sort of participate a bit as a purple belt in the arguing over what the rules should be. And some people were trying to preserve the art for MMA,
Yeah.
for true mixed martial arts. Others were trying to preserve the art is no, we are a grappling art that counters striking with grappling only. That pure defensive mode, like that's the pure art mode.
Yeah.
Is how do I counter your punch and kick and throw without punching and kicking you back?
Yeah. And I feel like if we start going down that path and have those discussions and stick to our own positions, you know, it creates a split, kind of like what happened with judo and jiu-jitsu. You know, Jiu-Jitsu and Judo started from the same branch, but they split
Yes.
because there was fundamental differences. I think that might happen in Jiu-Jitsu too.
It's already happening. Yep.
Yeah. And so basically what I'm taking away from this is that judo from 1964, it was kind of the same. And then in 1964, it starts evolving and it was continuing to evolve into the early 90s, maybe when you were like a kid and competing.
Yeah, so I started in Judo in the early 90s, yeah. And then up until, I don't remember the exact year, but probably somewhere in the mid 2000s, mid to late 2000s, the leg grabs were taken away. And when that happened, there was a significant change in the sport.
Significant.
And
Yep.
are there people who still train judo with leg grabs?
Very few. There is a movement. It's called the freestyle judo movement, but there is not. There's not as many because ultimately most of the dojos. First of all, there's a significant difference between judo and jiu-jitsu. Most of judo is taught in community centers, YMCA's, and so on. Most of jiu-jitsu is taught by private practice.
yeah.
So because of that, if I'm teaching at a community center, there's no incentive for me to grow the sport or market or do any of that, right? When it's my livelihood is on the line, there's incentive. That's why jiu-jitsu has exploded and judo has stagnated, because there's really no incentive when it's not your own private business a lot of times.
Well, the incentive can be growing your own personal art and helping other people to find a pathway
Exactly.
to whatever judo has done for you, to give it away. But
But
not everybody has that level of altruism.
Exactly. So if you don't have that level of altruism, which I love that though, I acknowledge you for that, because that's something I think we need more of it. Not just in judo and jiu-jitsu, but in the world. We need to have a sense of, okay, I'm building a community, I'm helping people. Because if we do that, then we get out of this mentality of superiority or focusing on differences and all of that.
Yeah.
So you create the community, you bring the people together, you have unity. And I think that's the biggest piece for me when it comes to judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, is like creating unity and creating a peaceful environment where people can share and be open with each other. And, having an environment where it's safe for you to go regardless of whatever else is happening in your life. It's like a sanctuary, like I said earlier.
And I mean, just like, it's like a crocodile or a shark has not evolved in millions of years because the environment that it's adapted to has not changed to push that. And adaptation happens when the environment changes. And in cultural, the coach does their best job to structure an environment to grow the group in the direction they want to. And sometimes the organization higher than the coach will alter even the coach against his own will be like, well, if they're doing these rules now and I want my guys to compete, in order to compete, we have to, in our limited amount of time, remove these former things that even though I love, we got to take them away. And
That
then
happened to me.
safety is the other thing. That changes the environment. Because in a pure thing, we would say, let's just see what happens. Injuries be damned. If they're injured, they out. Whoever survives up the chain, that's the art that will be preserved. And that's kind of like the old school mindset.
That's so true. That's so true. And what they take away when they change the rules, for example, in judo, you ever watch Ronda Rousey's MMA fights? She puts those arm bars on quick, right?
Yeah.
Do you know why? She's only got 5 seconds in judo to put it on before they stop her.
Yep.
So there was no option, right? So she got used to doing that. We got used to a 5-second ground game. How do you develop an amazing ground game in 5 seconds? It's really difficult.
Yep.
I mean, what happened then is the ground game just kind of stagnated in judo.
Vanished.
It didn't advance.
Yeah.
And jiu-jitsu brings this amazing ground game, brings it back. And that's why I love jiu-jitsu. It brought that part back for me. That part that I felt like I lost as a kid. We used to start back to back for our warm-ups. And then we'd turn around and then it'd be on your knees. And that's how we warmed up. Back to back was, part of our warm-up, our ground game. And we could go through whatever we wanted to at that point. But then when the rules changed, everything changed for us. When we're doing randori, our sensei would count to 5, and then if we weren't progressing,
That's it.
So
we had
how
to
long
stop.
did you used to be able to be on the ground for?
I don't remember the exact time
I don't
frame, but it
think
was
it was
definitely
even-
more than 5
Yeah.
seconds.
I don't think
It wasn't
Like
indefinite.
5 minutes or something.
No, it
They
wasn't
would
5
stand you
minutes.
back up.
I think it was maybe up to the ref or maybe 20 seconds.
Yeah.
I don't remember, to be
It
honest with
wasn't
you. Don't hold me to that much.
a specific time. It was, at least when I did judo the most, when I was a purple belt on a Navy base,
Around early 90s.
early 90s, that coach was old school. He was Kozin, and he loved the grappling game. And we spent almost half the time on the ground. And I noticed even then that the jiu-jitsu guys were spending almost no time standing. And I want to say what it was because I competed a couple times, was that if the referee thinks it's a stall, he's going to bring it up.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And because the guy knew I was a grappler, he goes, work fast and always be moving on the ground so the ref doesn't see it as a stall. And I didn't really realize that until later, thinking, oh, that's why. Because jiu-jitsu as a sport, if you ask me, is kind of boring. It's not an exciting sport. I would way rather see a high amplitude judo or a Greco throw than a guy holding a guy in cross sides for 8.5 minutes.
That's why they don't allow us to do the ground game. That's exactly why the ground game is so limited.
Because they
And why
wanted
they-
to entertain an
And why they
audience.
Exactly.
changed MMA to add in the rounds
Yes.
so that you start
To
back
get
on your
eyeballs on the screen and keep butts in seats.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say that is the absolute worst reason to alter the evolution of an art, is for fans. Because then it's, why do we need fans? Because we want butts in seats. Why do we want that? Because we want money.
Yes.
Ultimately, I mean, even in judo, it becomes a thing where you're appealing to a crowd.
But if you're appealing to the crowd at the Olympics, that's not about money, is it?
Sort of.
The Olympics is still about money, but ultimately with the Olympics, I mean, we're talking something bigger too, because the Olympics does build a community. It sets something up that you and I couldn't do on our own,
Yes.
right? There's something that a young kid can achieve to be, and through that, you're building the sport. So it does have that aspect of it. So like, let's imagine that there were no Olympics for judo. How many people would know what judo is?
It would be almost gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the difference, right? And I think jiu-jitsu has done such an amazing, and I give all of the jiu-jitsu black belts that have grown this sport, including you two, so much credit, because you guys have spread this sport faster since, 1994?
Yep.
Than judo has since 1964.
And
But
I
do you
will,
think that maybe the Olympics might have held it back in some ways?
in some ways.
In some ways, yes, obviously. But the thing is, in the U.S., you go to France, there's more people.
There's more judo than
There's so much more
jiu-jitsu.
judo
Yes.
in France. You go to Russia, you go to Japan, you go to all these other countries.
Yes.
Why has judo grown there and not in the U.S.?
Part of that too is like part of the reason why jiu-jitsu blew up was because the Gracie Challenge, and Horion gets a lot of credit for coming
Marketing.
over in the States, and he marketed it right at the perfect time of the internet exploding, globalization, whereas as one could have easily marketed a pancration back then, some other form of sub-grappling, because judo felt watered down, wrestling had no subs, and here was this unique art, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, that instead of adding rules, like all the other grappling arts did, and the striking arts, they kept adding rules. Jiu-jitsu in Brazil was removing rules, saying, no, take that away. Go as long until a person quits. And that charted a rapid evolution of a different style. So Brazilian jiu-jitsu in 1960s looked the same as Japanese Kozen judo, almost. But the Brazilian culture was different from the Japanese one. which the Japanese culture is a very conservative, passed down things like it's a very, some like critique it as almost robotic.
Yes, this is the way you do the technique.
Right.
If you don't do it this way, it's wrong.
Which
Which
also,
ironically, I heard that's how some jiu-jitsu,
that's what
Brazilian jiu-jitsu
now,
practitioners
now.
test their black
Yeah.
belts have to have it exactly like this or they don't get their belt.
Which I'm against that.
Me too.
And
Me too.
the other cultural critique, and I'll critique Western WASP American culture all day fucking long, I do. But the Japanese culture, as a result of the cultural rigidity, I think had less fluidity of the hips. It was good in framing and all that stuff. The Brazilians had culturally a much more hip swinging, fluid, dancing, capoeira feel that altered the art as well.
So there's a word we use, it's martial art. And an art is a form of expression. So if you have to do it the same way as everybody else, is it really an art anymore?
Right. It's a craft.
Yeah.
The difference
Dogma.
between art and craft is not an individual expression. Restoring a car is craft. You could do craft so well if you've mastered the art of restoration, right? But ultimately, it's a craft. Art requires original input or tweaks, and then we can jump in the whole thing about what is art. Is there any such thing as original, right? Which artists have been arguing forever, and every artist, I'm an artist, we think we do something really original, and we realize that we're really copying, or it's a mashup of other stuff, and then you land in the spot that, oh, nothing's original, therefore I'm just going to take bits and chunks of everything and make my own thing.
But that's a choice, right? But if you're not choosing, you're being told what to do, that's no longer a choice.
Yeah.
And that's where the art, I feel, gets taken away. The perfect example is the Korean style reverse seonagi. They do a reverse seonagi that is completely opposite of what we're taught in Japanese style judo. And it's amazing, and it works perfectly for them. And I don't think that would have came to be if they were just to follow what everybody else was doing and following the craft rather than creating an art.
Yeah.
They throw off the lapel.
I believe so, yeah. They go on the other side, yeah.
Well, I think too that being that I don't think any two people are exactly identical. So even if you feel like you're mashing up all your different experiences, your unique expression, whether it's your sculpture, your painting, or your martial arts, is always going to be slightly different than somebody else.
Yeah.
I think that's
All right, Hamid, I'm going to aim this at
Okay.
your youth a bit.
Sure.
So, Iran pre-radical Islam
Yes.
was a place of, I'm going to call it, I hesitate to use the words out there, give me a comment and call me an asshole if you want, a liberalizing culture that had phenomenal grappling arts. Wrestling around was known for having tremendous wrestlers, tremendous judoka. You can see pictures of an Iranian beach in 1970 where there's women in bikinis.
Yes.
And they're going to study. That vanished. We can argue as to reasons why. The culture made a massive shift.
It did. And I
Tell
feel...
us your life then.
Yeah, so I was born in 79 during the revolution, so I didn't get to see that, but I got to feel it through my parents, my family, everybody else. And I have to be careful what I say because I still have family back home.
Yes.
But for me, I think what I saw is there's a difference between the people of Iran and the government. There's such a big difference. And I want to make sure everybody understands this. If you've never seen Anthony Bourdain, go see his video of his travel to Iran and what happened. People invited him into their home. They considered him part of their family. They fed him. They laughed with him, so on and so forth. He comes out and says, "This is not the Iran that I thought it was going to be, that we are told Iran is," right? So it was a completely different experience for him, and that's really what the Iranian people are like. We are very social. We love people. We're very giving. We're very caring, and I feel like that was taken away because of how the government is perceived. And I believe it's not just Iran. I believe people everywhere are good. Everywhere around the world are good.
Palestine and Israel.
Exactly. I believe Palestinians are good. I believe Israelis are good. I believe Iranians are good. Iraqis are good. I believe everybody around the world is good, but it's the governments that pit us against each other and manipulate us to hate each other so that they can gain power over us. And I feel like the only way that we can combat that is with unity and community. So like we create peace by just talking to each other, understanding each other, and realizing that Israelis don't want Palestinian children dead. Palestinians don't want Israelis and their children dead. They don't want that. Nobody wants that in the world, right?
Some people sadly do, who
Yeah,
are in
the
charge.
people
I don't
who
want
are
my
killing
I don't want my
babies.
kid dead. You don't want your kids dead, right?
Right.
But somebody
If that's
wants
the
somebody's
case,
kids
then
dead.
why would you want conflict? Why would you want to put your own kids at risk?
Sadly, because some people have been taught, and I remember first hearing these words when I was a young Marine from someone else, and hearing it almost as a passing a joke, but it struck me, is you got to kill the kids because they're going to grow up and be your adult enemy one day. Like I remember hearing that and being horror struck that would come out of an American Marine's mouth.
Yep.
And
But something happened to that Marine to say that.
something
Somebody brainwashed
or
him.
got into his head that this is the enemy.
Yes.
And you have to completely annihilate the enemy, which is why Israel is doing such an annihilation round. Then they will say, but those families in Lebanon or Palestine or Gaza are letting the bad guy, a terrorist, put rocket launchers in their hospitals, houses, and schools because they think we won't attack those hospitals, houses, and schools.
Yep.
But we
So,
will.
but where does
And
it
then
end?
they do it. Where does it end?
With that mentality, where does it end?
Wars.
With that mentality, everybody has to die. Then.
Exactly. And in
And
the
that's the only end you can get to. And you can't fight hate with hate. It doesn't work.
Right.
You can only combat hate with love.
I agree.
That's the only thing that works. Otherwise, you're going to just keep fighting forever. It doesn't work. So, like, I think Gandhi said this. I could be wrong. But, like, he was trying to create peace. And don't quote me on this because I might be wrong. But this is back from high school, which I barely remember. But basically, imagine that you lost your kid, okay? And you are Israeli. And another Palestinian lost his kid. Imagine how much hate you must have, right, for the other side. Now, imagine that you take a kid from Israel, you're Palestinian, you take a kid from Israel who lost his or her parents, and you raise that kid. That hate, do you think that would grow? Or do you think that would diminish?
Right.
Because now you've replaced that hate with love. And that's the only way to combat what we're feeling inside. In each of us, there's this little kid, right? This little kid that when you were young would play with anybody. Didn't discriminate based on any
religion or race.
Yeah,
or
because you
anything.
didn't know, right? Because it didn't matter. Somewhere along the way, hate was created in you. You weren't born with hate.
Created from fear.
Exactly.
The fear is the precursor to hate.
Exactly. So we are programmed that way, right? Yeah. So we have to deprogram ourselves. And if anybody needs help with that, let me know. I will help you.
And amongst anthropologists who analyze this, is like human history, whether you want to say it's the last 10,000 years written history or the last 150,000 years of Homo sapien history, is no group has ever successfully been completely wiped out. Yeah. The Germans in World War II did the one of the best attempts, and I hesitate to use the word best because people put value on
most
that.
Thorough,
one of the most thorough attempts, and it utterly failed. The Stalinist regime attempted purges that utterly failed. And there's one camp that says you just didn't try hard enough. And there's people that are both of America, Europe, Israel, Iran, who believe that they just aren't trying hard enough, which keeps the persistence going. Yes. But if they study anthropology, like you say, they realize that hate only breeds more hate.
Yes.
That every time you kill the enemy, you're creating 3 more.
Exactly.
So the only way out is peace, negotiations, diplomacy. Then you have a camp that says that's appeasement, that you're appeasing. Look what happened when we tried to appease Hitler in 1938. See, we should have fought him then. And it becomes this ongoing debate, which I encourage you to study the dialectic. So you can get a big picture of what the fucking debate is. Because if you're stuck in the debate, you will choose a binary side.
Yes.
And you have to escape the binary.
I 100% agree with you. Yeah, if everything's black and white and there's no gray in the middle, then automatically you pit yourself against somebody else,
Yes.
and you don't see any other options. And if that's the case, then we're never going to be able to live together. We'll have constant conflict. But ultimately, I think human beings are advancing. We're gaining emotional intelligence nowadays. We're understanding that what we see on TV, on Instagram, on Facebook about the other side isn't necessarily true. It doesn't matter if it's in politics, in the world, or just about individuals. So like what we really need to do...
Sport jiu-jitsu versus...
Exactly.
The Haueter family. The Haueter family perfect family portrait. I don't even think we have one of those. Honestly.
And there's really
That's
nothing,
us.
there's nothing that can ever be perfect. But, it's this part of us, this never-ending, relentless doubt within us that generates these negative dichotomies or emotions. So, you just got to tell it. Can I swear?
Yeah.
You just
Have
got to
you
tell
heard
it to
of
shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Okay? Okay?
My mom doesn't like a lot of swearing, so be careful.
Okay, but I don't swear either. I have a 15-month-old. I don't swear either. But here's the reason I'm saying that for
will.
impact. I want to make sure people understand this never-ending, relentless doubt. You just tell it to shut the fuck up, okay? Yeah. And then you pick a fight with it, you win, and then you go and create your peace in the world.
And that's ultimately, I think one of the reasons why I think we all love jiu-jitsu and judo is because we have a fighting nature in us. Humans want to physically fight. And if we repress that, it's going to come out in some other area.
Yeah. So why don't we create a healthy environment like combat-based sanctuary where we can come, learn, get that out, and then go back and be peaceful.
And war, martial arts, martial means pertaining
military.
to military, pertaining to war. Like all this stuff came about because of fighting and because
your enemy's also
enemies.
training. Yep.
Yeah. I think that it's part of natural biological evolution to have enemies. Not that I want to make enemies, but it's just like we are animals, right? So this is, like you said, we're emotionally evolving in a positive direction, hopefully. But I don't know that as a species, we're ever going to be able to rid ourselves of our primal drives completely.
Yep.
Well, I think it depends. It depends on what your motivations are. If you want to be the person who brings peace into the world and you're willing to do it, you're like, what the heck, do whatever it takes, right? Mentality, then yeah, you're going to do it. Yeah, you might not do it 100% of the time, but you could probably get to 90% where you have situations where, somebody cuts you off, you want to swear at them. Instead, you say, yes.
Yeah, I wave at them. I want to put my middle finger up. Instead, I wave.
I know.
Yeah.
And I put my middle finger out and really regretted it.
But those moments happen for all of us, right? It's within us to just be angry, right, at the world. And then you're like, you know what? I can shift. I can choose to be, a positive influence. Somebody goes through and, maybe, I don't know what situations you guys are in, but, says something to you that offends you, right? You have a choice, even though inside of you, that primal part of you wants to
react
fight back and say something. Yeah. Guess what? 100 years ago, you could have probably beat the crap out of the guy and maybe nothing happened. Nowadays, you beat somebody up, you go to jail. So we have consequences, and we've created and conditioned people based on that environment that we've created to not do that for the most part. So,
and there's those two cultural drives. Fear is really contagious, but so is hope. Yeah. Hope and love. And that's another dialectic. And it's kind of like the old adage, like, well, which one wins? The one you feed. And if you feed fear, it's going to become hate. And if you feed love, it's going to become altruism. And altruism sounds naive, and fear sounds paranoid. So at some point in time, it's not that they cancel each other out, but it's that by understanding them, I think we'd have a better shot, hopefully, because of course, since 1945, mankind is now in the age where we don't only destroy ourselves, but we can destroy the planet.
But
That's
at
a
the
scary
same time, I believe that some amount of fear is necessary.
Yes.
Right? If you don't fear that the stove is going to burn you and you just grab it, then you're going to be messed up, right?
Yeah.
So the key really is to have balance. And if I'm so altruistic that I give everything I have
Right.
away so I can't take care of my family,
You're going to have
right?
nothing.
So we
Yep.
can't be the bottom line is extreme of anything isn't good.
It doesn't work.
Fear and fight and anger, these are all primal human
Yep.
emotions that we have that we just have to keep in check along with our giving. Huh?
Lizard brain.
Yeah,
Yes.
lizard
That
brain.
reptile brain.
Reptilian
And I've been
brain. That's Chris's thing.
I'm often told by people who are religious, they think that I don't see the good in religion. I say, no, I see it all the time. I even lean on it because any religion plus love tends to be a really good thing. Any religion plus fear tends to be a really bad thing,
Oh, yeah.
including atheism. Atheism plus fear tends to be a bad thing.
I never thought about it that way. Atheism plus fear equals bad. I'm in the same boat as you are. I've seen the good of religion and I've seen the bad. Obviously, what's happening in Iran, where you have, a theocracy, where you have religion that dictates laws, it suppresses people. That isn't helping the people, right? I've seen religion where people go out and help others and they give of themselves and they bring up the community and the community grows. That's amazing. And that type of religion, ultimately, leads to a community that has unity.
Yes.
So if the religion is creating unity without fear, absolutely it's an amazing thing. Unfortunately, when I went to church, they told me I'm going to hell if I don't accept Jesus Christ into my life. So that pushed me away because I don't respond to fear.
I don't respond to fear that way either.
When that happens, I think what you're doing is you are creating an environment where that person is doing something out of fear.
Yeah.
Therefore, they're not really doing it for themselves.
Yes, and like what I've noticed is that this will sound arrogant, but I don't think most people, especially religious people, understand what the word faith really means. And the atheist just says it means, oh, you're dumb because you're believing in things without evidence. But it takes a lot of courage to believe in something without evidence.
It does.
Even when the evidence says that it probably won't happen, that's where hope squeezes in. And hope and faith are two things that are very powerful as hate and fear. But when people start thinking that they can logically prove why their religion is right, that only leads to fear. Fear of death, fear of not being included, fear of all these other things, where you really do have to take that leap of, fuck, I don't know, but I'm going to try it anyways. And it's like that thing in our art. When the more open-minded I am, the better experience I have on the mat, the more I learn, but the more I start thinking, oh, I'm the instructor. I need to do this or that. It invites in fear. And then it invites in me not wanting to risk, because fear says don't risk, which again, like
But at
Melissa
the same
said, sometimes
time,
it's healthy not to risk.
You have to have a little, like if you know you're rolling with a person who might hurt you and you're not a little bit afraid and being cautious because you don't want to get hurt, you don't have your tapping hand ready or you're not framing to protect yourself and you're just going loosey-goosey. I feel like I get that more than other people because I'm small and delicate.
Yeah,
I sense that in you from our first roll. So when I roll with you, you know how I roll with you. Our rolls are fun because I want to take that fear out. I don't want that fear when we roll. So I remove it as an element. And if we all think of that kind of environment that we want to create, that we remove fear from as an element in our rolling, then guess what? We're going to have a true learning environment where everybody can kind of learn from each other.
Yeah. And that fear was instilled in me by 10 years of chronic injuries, including like needing surgery, losing a kidney, spraining my knees 10 times. I didn't get to this place being, older now. I'm like, I can't put myself through what I did in my 30s into my 40s.
And you jumped in your youth, you jumped in without fear.
I had no fear until I was probably in my early 40s, which is around the time you met me.
Yes. Yes. That's exactly when I met you. I think 5 years ago.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years ago, something like that. Yeah. So that's exactly
when I
when
was starting to sink in that I just can't roll this way anymore. I've got to be a little more careful.
Yes.
Yeah. I think one of the funniest conversations that I've had frequently over the last 10 or 12 years, increasingly over the last few is I'll get a person to agree that extremism of anything's bad. And yeah. And then I'll think, well, God, I see them as being extreme. I wonder if they see me as extreme, right? I'm always like wondering that. And that's that thing where I think most people think they are moderate, balanced, and thoughtful of things. And as a true philosopher, I think the mark is that you're after more, that you love when there's no answers, but more questions. I think like I'm always wondering if I'm the extreme one in my head.
And the fact that you're questioning it probably means you're not.
But I would think there's areas where you're extreme.
Yes.
You're extremely hyper.
Yeah.
You're extremely moderate.
I used to say that.
So like
I'm too moderate. I need to get more extreme.
You're extremely
You're
involved.
passionate. There's a
Yeah.
Would anyone who is extreme actually admit that they are extreme?
Right, that's what
I don't
he's
think
just
they
saying.
do. So I'm wondering if I'm that guy.
But you think, I don't think we're looking at it correctly. I think like you're passionate.
I'm passionate.
I think
for sure.
you can't mix passion with extremism. Because if you
that's
do,
a
that's a
bad
different
combo.
thing, right?
Yep.
You can be passionate in the middle. You can be passionate on the left. You can be passionate on the right.
Yeah.
But as a person who's like not into politics and news and all these things, I would say he's extremely involved. But then I'm involved zero. So my scale of judgment is skewed because I don't like watching that at all.
You are definitely correct in that. I am extremely interested in philosophy, history, and current affairs. Like extremely.
Like obsessed.
You're like the Alan Watts of jiu-jitsu.
And I find it like perplexing how anyone can't be. But then I also think, well, maybe they're happier than me. But then I'll think, I'm not unhappy. So I'm going to go back to what I'm interested in.
I'm perplexed about how you're perplexed that anyone else couldn't be into something just because you're into it. You know what I mean?
Well,
like
it's
we're
not
all
because I'm
into our
it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like
But
how
here's the thing: when you exhibit your passion for something, you automatically enroll other people unconsciously.
Yeah.
Not with intent to enroll them, but they enroll in whatever you're talking about, and they become interested because of your passion. So, and I see that all the time when you're talking about jiu-jitsu. You talk about jiu-jitsu with such passion that it grasps other people. And I think that's the reason the sport has grown, because of that passion.
There's a lot of passion in this art, yeah.
But his true passion is current affairs.
Well,
in philosophy.
But
I would
he
argue
mixes the two, right? He brings the two together,
He
jiu-jitsu
does.
and
I would argue that my true passion is passion itself.
Yeah.
And maybe I need that in order to, like Albert Camus says, to not want to kill myself.
Okay.
Maybe I need to continually question the meaning of life and existence. But I have to recognize that some people are perhaps wisely not as passionate about such things.
well, some people just lost their passion at sometimes a young age. They lost that joy, they lost that passion, and they're kind of robots going through the world like the Tin Man.
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately, I won't, and I don't want those people to affect the people that I know are passionate. So like whenever somebody has that, never-ending doubt, like, hey, maybe it's me. No, it's not you. If you're passionate, stay passionate. If you have joy in your life, keep it, because so many people don't. And if they don't want you to have it either. So, keep that and spread it. And then that's how we build the unity. That's how we build the peace in this environment, in this community that we have.
Well, and also, I always think about the impact of our childhood on our adult lives, right? That period of time from 3 years old to 18, which isn't that long, has way more impact, way richer, stronger memories and all that than as we are older. And I can't help but it often saddens me when I think of some passionate child who has that passion ripped out of them. Either they're told, you can't think that way because of this, or you're having too much fun with doing that, or you need to grow up, like whatever message it is, or the message of a culture rapidly shifting on them. Maybe a bomb from another a country completely altering that child's life and that impact.
Yes.
And I personally feel like a selfish asshole if I'm not thinking about that. That for me, selfishness seems smiling through life. That seems, but then am I really helping? I ask myself. I'm not with the guy who's going over volunteering aid to the place that was hit by a hurricane or a bomb or whatever it is. And sometimes I think maybe that's what I should do. But then would I abandon my own kids?
Exactly.
If that's what I did,
Exactly.
right?
That's
Well,
And I've had that argument with myself. But go ahead. You haven't talked to
Oh, no, it's perfect. This is how it should go. But smiling through life is almost your highest and best use as an individual,
Grab a
right?
tall boy.
Tobin's really good at that, I think. I feel like Tobin's really good at being generally positive.
Yes.
You don't think so? I feel like you're a positive person.
I think you
feel
are.
like I'm kind of a negative person, but that's okay.
We
But I
need
think-
that too.
We need that too.
We need the doubter.
But here's the thing. Once we understand ourselves and we break down those walls, I think that's where we really start to bring back that, like you said, the little child that would play with everybody, that loved everything.
that wants
and
to sing in public. Yep.
Exactly. You bring that back. One thing you said really resonated with me. If a kid's getting bombs dropped on them, I don't share this, and I think this is probably I've shared this a handful of times in my life. How do I say this? So when I was in Iran, I was born in '79. From '79, I think till '89, Saddam was attacking Iran.
Yeah.
I lived in Isfahan, so constantly we had anti-aircraft fire and bombs in Isfahan. And I remember we would run into the park because those were the safe places. They were aimed for buildings. So we would gather up, run into the park. It was a very, very scary situation. And I remember my parents trying to kind of make light of it, make us happy. But obviously, stuff's exploding around you. It's scary. Imagine a kid, hearing a firework, right? They get scared from a firework. Now imagine 100,000 fireworks everywhere. Bam, 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 bam. Everywhere, and stuff blowing up. That was the environment. So like when I'm taking a look at that and what person I could have become because of that and the choices I chose, and then we came to the US, I came to a school where, I was different, and part of the reason I have 2 black belts is because of that experience. Getting to the point, the belts meant nothing to me.
Right.
What meant something to me is I want to be connected. I want to be in a community. And what I really want is to empower myself and love myself. And you don't have that when you're coming from the environment of fear.
Right.
You're going through, you're traveling across countries just to get away from violence. And then you come here and there's more violence at school because you're not accepted.
And they hate you.
Because you.
Just from where you're from.
Exactly. All of those things. And not that I don't appreciate and acknowledge all of my experiences. Yeah. But I think it would have been a different experience had I moved to California. We have a lot more diversity here. I moved to Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Oshkosh Bagosh?
Oshkosh Bagosh, and at the time that had like a population of 35,000 people or something. I don't remember. 40,000 people. So it wasn't a very big environment. And, at that time, there weren't a lot of people that were different.
Yeah.
So obviously, if you're different, and it's not like the kids, did this with,
Overt maliciousness.
yeah, it wasn't that way. I think it was something different. I can't put my finger on it. And
Probably fear.
Kids are assholes.
they can be. They can be.
But the
But
point,
you
point
fear
is-
something that's different, right? So then they act.
And I
maybe
became
they're not
friends with a lot of
inclusive.
them later
Kids are
on.
assholes.
We became friends, and I love them. But I remember this one fight, and I won't name names, but it was on a snow hill. So when it snows in Wisconsin, they take all of the snow and they put it into one big hill on the playground so that we would have the rest of the playground to play with. And this huge hill eventually kind of like condenses and gets kind of hard,
it's
hardened,
icy hard.
a
Yeah.
little bit hardened. And this particular group of kids was bothering me. So, I got into a fight with them. And with one of them specifically, we decided that we were going to fight after school. We went on this hill.
Yeah.
We're fighting. He wasn't doing so well. So all his friends jumped in and beat the crap out of me. Just like completely annihilated me. And I just, to this day, I
Your
remember
sense of
that fight like it
justice
happened
is
yesterday.
just,
Yes. So like, there's like 15 kids beating the crap out of me. I had one friend, he was my neighbor across the street. Not neighbor, but he lived like across the street from me. Sometimes we'd walk to school, but he was the biggest kid in class. And I remember he kind of ran towards the pile of kids and screaming, and they all jumped off. And, I went home and I was so ashamed. I went into my room and I didn't want anybody to know.
well, you're rejected.
Yeah,
That's
so-
like I always just go back to, we are animals. Imagine being in a tribe and being group beat up and kicked out of the tribe. That's sure death. Like, we have an instinctive drive that says, be part of the pack.
Yes.
Even if the pack's going fascist, be part of the pack. But anyways,
But yeah, so that happened. But I think that experience in itself, if you just take it as that one experience, yeah, it's super negative. But if you look at the whole tapestry of my life, guess what? What it provided for me is everything else that came afterwards. It provided you guys for me, Tobin, and all the people here. My sensei in judo, my friends in judo, my gym that I had back home. All of those things, positive things came from that. So it's your perspective.
Yeah.
I can take that and look at it as, oh my God, woe is me. That was such a horrible experience, and I should, hate those people. No, I actually love them because from something so negative, something positive was
I remember
created.
being young, holding on to my jiu-jitsu black belt. I mean, I'm not that young at the time. I was 31 or
That's young.
Whatever. It's young, and thanking everybody that had ever picked on me or beat me up. Thank you guys for doing this. That whole Conan thing where like he thanks his enemies before he kills them because you would not have made me Conan, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the beauty of this whole world is if we just shift our perspective, we can change and unite people, even people that maybe we hated before or hated us before.
Yes.
I hated that group of kids. Now I love them. I love what they created in my life, I love the fact that I get to do jiu-jitsu at 45 when most people my age are sitting in front of the TV, hopefully watching this podcast, but sitting in front of the TV, gaining weight and getting older and they feel lost.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a community. I feel like I have people that care about me, and I feel like I have amazing leadership and instructors that I can learn from. I'm grateful for you two every day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hamid. Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
That's a good spot to move on to our next segment. That was awesome, man. Great conversation. I wanted to hear about like Jimmy Pedro's and more judo stuff, but I actually feel like this was better. And I think what we could do is maybe you could come again, and we could do more USA judo talk and stuff like that.
I would love to.
But that was
What
definitely useful.
would be kind of a cool topic show?
Huh.
We get like 2 or 3 the judo guys and see the differences and minutia of opinions on judo and how they
panel?
relate it.
I think the
to
important
their
The
jiu-jitsu.
buzzer.
conversation ends up being how sport can be something that helps overcome hate and helps people understand each other.
Ah, yes.
And then maybe it's kind of like, okay, so if jiu-jitsu is this thing that's like available to a lot of people due to what it is and how it can be really huge and it goes to the Olympic level, how can you best guide it there? But that's
Okay, yeah,
another
well,
day.
all right.
That's another day because we're running out of time. And we got
Sorry.
some sick cues to hit today.
All right.
Okay.
We have a hotline. All right. So
It's hot.
it's hot on the hotline lately. So we started a hotline. So if you call on your phone, 949-791-7763, you can leave a message. You can also text that hotline. You can text a question. You can just rant on the hotline about something that's bugging you at your jiu-jitsu school.
Yep. All
You
are
can make
welcome.
us laugh.
And
You could
Chris
be a comedian.
and Melissa will answer your questions and pontificate on your problems, which I
You
know
can
Chris
even
loves to solve
shoot
people's
us
problems.
10 messages if you're a Russian bot.
Yeah, there you go.
We love
Yeah.
Russian bots.
Except we're good at identifying the bots, I feel like. So we have a hotline hit to address today. And then we also got a super good cue and email. We have podcast at combatbase.com. You can send an email to get your questions answered. All right, everybody?
Yes.
So this is the first time we've shared a hotline hit on our show. So I'm gonna play it, and we're gonna hit this one. All right, ready?
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm just curious how Chris and Melissa met for the first time, the first encounter, first thoughts on each other. Just curious on that. Great podcast. I enjoy watching it, all the jiu-jitsu stuff and everything. Bye.
Okay.
So
I'm going to go first.
we can play this in
Right.
post-production. It'll
Good
go on
post
top.
sound.
Okay.
So that door closing won't fuck it up too bad. So yeah, what's up with that?
All right. So basically, Chris, I ran into Chris at a local Hermosa Beach hangout spot. And I saw him and I thought that he was cute. You know, he was staring at me. I think he had heard of me and knew that I was going to be at this place. In fact, that's really the story. I knew somebody, we had a mutual acquaintance. Let's not even call him a friend.
It's a mutual acquaintance.
A mutual acquaintance. And Chris was talking to the mutual acquaintance and he was describing a woman that had many of my characteristics.
I was describing to him my dream woman. And I even said, I'm going to give an American woman one more chance. And then I'm all done with American broads. I'm going overseas and I'm going to find me a wife someplace else. And I described what I wanted. And he was like, I know that girl. And I'm like, shut up. And he's like, no, I really know that girl. And I described like a bunch of things, like what the requirements were in mind, body, and spirit. He's like, I know that girl. And my test was to see if she would like my dog, because they had to like dogs, because the relationship I was with previous was one of those people that would kick the dog out of the house and kick the dog off the bed. And I'm really into dogs, especially back then. Dogs are like, I have 100,000 years of genetic instinct that says hunt with a pack of dogs, keep dogs near you. They smell better, they hear better, they're faster at the sprint, we're longer at the run. It's like they're the perfect co-companion. But anyways, so I'm at this mutual hangout spot and I spot her and I'm like, I think that's her.
That's your new podcast title, The Last Chance.
And
The CEO, The Last Chance.
And my dog at the time, Jack, I would tie him up outside because he wasn't allowed in, because that's, you know,
The rules.
It's not France.
It's not
And
France.
he would kind of howl. He'd go, oh. And she was so interested in the dog, could care less about any of the humans in the building, which was so opposite of my last relationship, who was totally uninterested in animals and only interested in fucking human drama bullshit. I was like, that's her.
Yeah, so I went out and I played with the dog, Jack, baby Jack. May he rest in peace. And then Chris asked me to go out and eat tacos, and I
Yep.
just went with him.
Yep.
I didn't even know him at all because I was a young,
Naive.
naive 24-year-old And so, yeah, my first impression was that I did not think that he was 14 years older than me because he does look younger than
I generally look
his
10 years
age.
younger than my age.
He could
generally
pass for
speaking.
50 right now, even though he's going to be 60 at the end of
Jesus.
December. But yeah, he was 38. And he takes me out to this place. And first of all, I was like, was he a burn victim? I didn't understand the ear thing. That was another one, another first impression. I was like, did not get the ear thing. I was like, what is wrong with his ears? But cute, but what is wrong with the ears? And he's asking me all these heavy questions, like about what he should do with his life and all this stuff, like we're running out of time or something. I'm like, and he says to me, and so I asked him, I go, well, how old are you? And he was like 38. And I was like, you're 38 and you're not married and you don't have any kids? That was like boggling in my mind, like as a 24-year-old.
Like, what's wrong with him?
I was like, well, you should do that then.
Any good Catholic,
Yeah, by now you should at least have, a few. Anyways, that was my first impression was what is wrong with these ears? Cute. What's wrong with the ears? Love the dog. And
she was
why aren't you
interested
married
in jiu-jitsu.
already?
And as soon as she was interested in that, I'm like, okay.
Well, I remember we had the tacos and then you're like, I gotta go. And I'm like, where are you going? You're like, I gotta go to jiu-jitsu. I'm like, okay, fine, goodbye, whatever. You were running off to do a class. So then I think it was like on our third date.
It was the third date.
And that might be the second question. When I ever first really did jiu-jitsu was when he showed me some guard arm block bars in the front garage. And I was like, oh, I want to go to class. And then I started going to class.
Boom.
Yeah.
What were your first impressions?
Of me.
I mean, I really believe that we humans as pattern recognition machines often imply causal stuff there that isn't really there. So like we say, oh my God, I prayed for a red car and a red car just went on by. It's like, that's just because you missed the 19 other red cars that went by every month. But
there weren't 19 other me's.
But there wasn't 19
by.
other hers. And it really did feel like, and most people who know me know I am not a supernatural believer at all. But it did almost feel like the universe or God, like I knew this is going to be the girl I marry. I just knew it. She doesn't know it yet. But that God, universe, whatever, doesn't want her to know it yet. But I know it.
But within 6 months, I had a ring on my finger, so then I knew it.
Hey. Chris, I feel like you're my mirror. Almost the same thing happened to me. I got married very late. I got married at 40. When I saw my wife, it was at her sister's wedding. I talked to her probably for, I want to say at least an hour and a half after the wedding ended. Maybe an hour and a half, something like that. But she didn't know that I was interested. Everybody else at the wedding knew. She didn't know. I was like, this is the girl I'm going to marry.
Yep.
And then long distance for like 6 months because she lived in California. I lived in Wisconsin.
Test.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a test.
Nice. That was really sweet.
Aw,
and entertaining.
so sweet.
Yeah.
Now we fight all the time.
Fast forward 22 years.
Handful of kids, jiu-jitsu injuries.
It's not a fairy tale.
Running
it's
a business
journey.
together.
Yeah. It's not a fairy tale.
Together
it's a
all the time. Together. Aw.
So if anybody else out there has any epic questions or things you want to just get off your chest, hit the hotline. 949-791-7763. In email, we got a cool cue that came through. The title was Big Burly Bastard Training Partners.
Ooh.
All right. So, hi guys. I'm a 3-stripe blue belt from Ireland. There's a guy at my gym who's a purple belt and has about 15 kilograms weight advantage on me. I can catch him sometimes in a submission, and he'll come back at me very aggressively, trying to put me back in my place. He seems to have a massive ego about losing to me. How do I deal with a person like this? Love the podcast, guys. Keep it up. Peace out, Dave.
Oh, I know that this is something that a lot of us might experience. I mean, I know that maybe sometimes if like I get caught by somebody, I'm trying harder the next round. I don't know if it's an ego thing or if it's just like well, come on now,
on.
like my
It's on.
turn.
Yeah.
Let me try to get
You're
after
matching
it
their
now.
energy.
Yeah, matching energy. But I would say that for our friend here, the blue belt, that if you know this is going to happen, then you can go on to defensive mode and really work some solid, think street defense. If the person's really getting aggro, right? Mm-hmm. And if it's too much, I'm always an advocate of just tapping.
Communication.
You don't want to get hurt. Yeah, communication.
Yeah.
Absolutely tap off.
Yeah.
If they're-
Yep. Tap early, tap often. Make sure you leave the mat feeling better than you did when you came onto the mat. And you do that consistently and persistently. Either he will change, you will change, or he will go away.
I like that. Yeah, you have to have been in it for a long time to realize that he will go away part.
Yes.
Yeah.
He will change or go away.
Yeah.
The current version of him will change or go away.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I would agree with those. I think there's two different ways to look at it, as an opportunity to get, like, I almost look for that. Like, I want them to, like, come.
But you're in that competitive mode.
I want them to
right
come
now,
as hard as they feel like they can come.
You want to feel the A game.
Yeah, and I feel like it almost plays to my advantage sometimes, because, like, I'll loosen up a little bit when they come hard.
Yes, I like that
you
too.
can catch. But
And that's kind of part, though, of going into defensive mode is like you don't want to match the energy.
Right.
That's the wrong thing to do, I think,
Yeah, I
is
think so, too.
matching that.
definitely not. I get into trouble like that.
Yeah,
sometimes.
well, that's like how I got my ankle broken or how I got whatever. You know what I mean? It's like that when I try to match the energy, I end up hurt.
Yeah. If there's a weight discrepancy, yeah, you can't go, two rams butting against each other. I agree with that.
But I think you got to either think of it as an opportunity to get that type of training and think of it as a training opportunity, or you need to just communicate like, hey, like, I don't want to train with you or whatever. I mean, I've definitely had like really good, like respected black belts go like, hey, I don't want to train with you. And I'm like, cool. It's all good. You can just not train with that guy if it's freaking you out or you think you're going to get hurt or something like that. Seems like it makes sense. There's nothing wrong with just bowing out,
And
I think.
I've also
Yeah.
found that as an aging martial artist, note how I said martial artist, not combat athlete, I actually like when somebody comes at me with that energy and I don't respond.
Yeah.
I like that, and I don't get beat either. But that's because I got a lot of experience.
Yeah.
And I know how to just kind of stick to them and stall and
frame and protect
Yes,
yourself.
yeah.
Like I was talking with somebody last night about being on your side and just like having this position where almost like you're in fetal position, like you're not getting smashed, you're not getting submitted, and they can be doing whatever. I think that's a big thing that I learned from training with Cindy because she's really tiny and she's really good at that. I never submitted her in like forever when I trained with her.
Another
'Cause
thing
she's
about
really good at that.
about this cue is the guy asking the question is a blue belt, and the guy that's, let's say, attacking him is purple belt and heavier.
Right.
Yes.
So when the blue belt, the blue belt says he can tap the purple belt sometimes, so he gets
that's
the
going to
purple belt.
affect his ego.
Right.
But I
That's
also
amazing.
feel like that's part of the deal.
That is part of the deal.
That's how you. Another way to think of it is the blue belt is serving the purple belt by pushing him along. He's pushing
Yes.
him to want to try to be better, and then the purple belt is dragging the blue belt along, trying to push him forward too.
And it's
that conflict is good in a lot of ways.
It
As
is
long
good in a
as you
lot of
can
ways.
decide, I think I'm going to get hurt, and it's not going to keep
And
me
so
training.
much of the novice mindset entering this is I'm in here to get confidence.
Yeah,
And confidence, ironically, comes from humility.
Yeah.
Not from beating a bunch of people.
Right.
It comes from getting beat most of the time, then beating a few, and then over the long haul, it's like, oh, wow, I can handle defeat. Now I'm confident.
yeah.
And the blue belt is, by not matching the energy, is working towards not having the same ego issue as maybe the purple belt might have.
Yes.
All right. Those are our cues for the day. So again,
Yay.
send in some cues. Call the hotline. The hotline's super fun. We've had a bunch of cool hits on the hotline. We've had some wild ones. We think we might be getting pranked.
Russian bots.
We've been pranked.
We might have gotten pranked pretty hard,
Getting pranked on the hotline.
but it was still fun.
Super fun. Haven't laughed out hard in years.
So our last little segment here, we just have a special question for you. Did you read this in your notes?
I did.
Okay.
But you can ask it. Go ahead.
Okay. I just want to make sure because I feel like I asked this question or I get to this segment and the guests didn't read the notes. They're like blindsided by the question. And they're like,
No,
"What?"
go ahead.
So what is it that you love so much about judo?
So I was thinking about this quite a bit after you sent the question to me. And I don't think it's just judo. I think it's judo, jiu-jitsu, wrestling. All of it is for me. And I think most of the people around me already know. It's not just like the art or learning, the growth. I love all of that. And the growth is big for me because I love growing as a human being. And I think we all need to grow, whether we're learning about ourselves, learning a technique, learning about other people. I think that's a part of life that keeps you alive and joyous and passionate. But I think the other part that keeps me joyous and passionate is you, Tobin, Chris, Melissa, the people. I think that the people, the unity, the community, that's the part I love the most. So like in judo, it was beautiful because judo is much more hierarchical than jiu-jitsu. You know, I can't just promote someone to black belt in judo. I have to get permission from either the Yodan Shikai or USA Judo, all these other things, right? Jiu-jitsu gives you a lot more autonomy. But even with that hierarchy in judo, you still have a community. You have people that, you know, let's say I'm having a bad day. I come onto the mat. You know, I tell my training partner, hey, you know, it's just kind of a rough day for me. I want to forget about it. Let's train hard today. They understand you. They're like, yeah, okay, let's do it. They're open to it. And that's been my experience. And so my experience of judo, my experience of jiu-jitsu has really been the people and the experiences I've had with them and the community and how that for me brings joy and passion back into my life.
Nice. Yeah. Well done. We feel it. Well, dude, that's it. We're wrapping it up.
All right.
Thanks so much for being a part of our show.
Thank you.
And for
Thank you
sharing
for
so much.
having
That
me.
was a super interesting conversation. I was like very much enjoying listening. And we'll catch you on the mats, man.
Yeah,
Thanks again.
absolutely.
We gotta do
Absolutely.
part two.
Yeah, part
Thank
two
you,
would be
thank you,
awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
We were gonna do a gym shout out, right?
Oh, yeah.
I got one right here.
Yeah, do a
Wanna
quick
do a
gym
shout
shout out
out?
and then we'll tell that
Okay,
one.
we're going to give a gym shout out today to Hybrid Combat Martial Arts in Amarillo, Texas. Head coach Nicholas Day. Chris is headed on out there this weekend. At Hybrid Combat Martial Arts, they believe in order to excel at anything in life, you should possess solid values and a strong character that develop the dedication needed to achieve your goals. Their team of instructors are there to inspire you to be your very best. Joining them will give you the all-important inner strength to navigate our complex world with confidence and drive. Whether you're a seasoned martial artist or a parent wanting to involve your kid in a new sport, you'll be welcome there. At Hybrid Combat Martial Arts, they are dedicated to your success, and your first class is on them. So you can contact their gym today. More information is available at combatbase.com under our training group section. And again, Chris is headed on out there today to see the crew over in Amarillo, Texas.
Yep. A great guy. I think he's getting his PhD now in psychology, Army, a combat vet, and great guy.
What an amazing vision. I love that.
While you're on combatbase.com, if you want to join, what happens? What can you do? Can you hit that
Oh,
with promo code?
how about using our promo code?
Nice.
We've got a promo code podcast if you want to join the Combat Base Club and look at our video library as well as our classes that we do, Q&As, and we have exercise classes, all kinds of stuff to help you get fit for jiu-jitsu. If you have aches and pains and you want to stretch out and do some yoga with me, or if you want
to get fit.
My philosophy is if you can't do these movements without some body hanging on you, how are you going to do it with a body hanging on you? So you can join me in these high intensity interval training sessions where we work your mobility up so that you're ready to go on the mat. Maybe you're interested in doing jiu-jitsu, but you don't feel able to yet.
But pre-jiu-jitsu.
Yes, pre-jiu-jitsu. I offer pre-jiu-jitsu instruction at combatbase.com. And if you want to get a merchandise discount because you're not quite ready to join the club, but you want to get 10% off shirts, hats, rash guards, shorts, patches, art, all kinds of stuff. We have an order for hoodies. I don't know when they're going to be here. But anyways, you can type in podcast 10, one word, podcast 10 for 10% off merchandise.
And you can learn some judo from Hamid.
Hamid's on the
has some
combat
videos. If you
base.
join
Yes,
combat
we
base
have.
club.
We need to put some more judo with
Absolutely.
Hamid.
I'm
We
all
definitely
We
need to
need
put
more judo.
more judo with Hamid. We'll have to
guys-
coordinate that
You
when
can
the
watch
Absolutely.
when
Hamid
the
throw me
travel
like 100
schedule
times.
calms down.
We need more judo on the
Tobin might be
instructional
into
base.
it, into coming, so you could throw him around.
Tobin was in the video too, so he's not giving himself credit.
Whack, whack, whack. All right.
Let's do that again.
All right.
Pound,
like, and subscribe.